Thank you very much for joining us. Now, you were appointed CEO of the ATP Tour in September, just in time for the Asian swing. From your new vantage point as CEO, can you please give us your thoughts on the five ATP events in China in terms of their organization, the venues, the fans, and just the general success of the swing this year?
Yeah, I mean, I joined, and actually, my very first trip was out in Asia, as officially as CEO. I went to the Masters in Shanghai. Always a great experience. I think, look, we are, we're delighted to have five tournaments in China. I mean, it's such a big market. Unfortunately, not been able to attend all of them yet because I just started in September. I'm looking forward to going to all of those tournaments next year. But from what I've seen and what I've heard, I mean, Beijing and Shanghai have made, huge improvements in their infrastructure. Shanghai's gone from, a 12-day event. They attract, some of the best players in the world. Finals are incredible. The infrastructure, the facilities. I mean, it's, in China, that's one of the great advantages, that they're just so good at building infrastructure and organizing great events. I wish that could be the standard for most of our tournaments around the world.
Well, as you mentioned there, of course, there is clearly a huge appetite for tennis here in China, and the men are finally starting to, well, not catch up to the women, but starting to follow in their success a little bit. Obviously, of course, Li Na did so much for the sport here in the country and around the world. Zheng Qinwen, of course, winning the Olympic gold last summer. But now the men have had significant breakthroughs too in the past couple of years, winning tournaments and stepping up on the Olympic stage as well. What do you think has fueled the boom of tennis in China, and what can the ATP do to keep it growing?
Yeah, I mean, tennis. It's funny. It can come and go quite quickly because it depends as well on players that make it. Like you just said, on the women's side right now, there's some great success, but the men are coming up, and I think China has that possibility. They have the infrastructure, they have the investments, they have the motivation, and uh, and it's just a question of time, I believe, before one of these great guys. I mean, Zhang's playing so well, and Wu, and there's some young kids coming along the way. And then you just have to hope that, with a bit of luck and a lot of hard work, because it is a lot of hard work, one of these could break into the top 10. And my dream would be, imagine having a Chinese number one player, what that would do to the number of fans that would be following tennis just in that single market in China would be huge for the ATP.
The ATP has announced a new Masters 1000 tournament for Saudi Arabia for 2028. What are your thoughts on this tournament, and what does it mean for the growth of the game?
Look, I think it's a great opportunity. One, because it brings tennis to a different part of the world as well. I think it's important. Tennis is such a global sport. The Middle East has had a couple of, 500, 250 tournaments, but bringing 1,000 to that region, I think is great for the game of tennis. That region is developing a lot, but not only that region. I think they're very closely connected with all of North Africa and the GCC region as well. And I think it'll bring a lot more attention to tennis in the Arab world, which is great because there's a huge population there, just like we talk about China, huge population with kids that are growing up, starting to pick up a racket, and who knows, these could be the future champions like the Chinese or in the next 20, 30, 40 years. You look at other sports like football now, we've got, great players from all over the world. So tennis needs to develop that. I think the Masters thousands in Saudi as well will bring, big investments in terms of infrastructure. I think they will push the level of innovation in terms of, you can imagine a stadium full of technology, right, in 2028, and that will push the other masters to follow suit.
We've been talking a lot about the growth of the game and the top end being the ATP Tour, the summit of the sport. There's only so much room for so many tournaments. As we said, Saudi Arabia would be the 10th Masters, four Grand Slams, the ATP finals at the end of the year, and then a host of 250s and 500s scattered in there. And one of the common complaints you hear from tennis players, and indeed all athletes these days, is a crowded calendar. They're being pushed to the limits. We're seeing more injuries towards the end of the season. You've played yourself, you've been a pro, you understand this. Do you commiserate with the players and their complaints about the packed schedule? Is there anything that the ATP ATP can do to resolve this?
Yes, we are looking to reduce the length of the calendar for sure. On the other hand, we know we want to make sure that fans around the world are able to watch tennis, and so we're not taking out tournaments from regions of the world that are super important. And the third point is, at the end of the day, I think it's also working closely with the players. I mean, there is no obligation for the players to play every single tournament of the year. I mean, that they're obviously going to play the four slams. We want them to play the thousands because that's the pinnacle of the sport. But then the choice, after that is also a question of self-discipline and managing your agenda. And it's a bit like an employee in a company. It's important they take vacation of time, from time to time just to reset. And there's never a good time to take a vacation in a company. There's always work to do, right? And so it's the same in tennis. There's never a good time to take some time off because your competitor's playing somewhere. But it's a question of saying if your body's saying take a couple of weeks off, take a couple of weeks off, and that's maybe working closely with coaches and agents as well. So there's different things we can do, but I think we need to work on this together. The players need to understand their scheduling, and we need to give them the best scheduling possible.
Now, upon your appointment, the ATP statement said that you will continue to lead one vision. Can you please tell us more about this plan and your ambitions for it?
Look, I think it's great for the game of tennis. It's building transparency between the players and the tournaments, uniting a little bit the members to work for a common goal. So, having that transparency of, the tournament financials so the players can feel like they're part of the success story. So that we have like a profit sharing model with the tournaments and the players. It's increased the compensation for the players because the tournaments are doing better. And that allows the tournaments to build better infrastructure. Better infrastructure means the fan experience is better as well. So more fans flock to the events. And so you're creating a better product altogether.
Well, finally, as a former professional yourself, you represented Kenya at the Davis Cup. You have given so much of your life to tennis. Please, what makes the sport so special and why should everybody play?
There's so many great things about this sport. First of all, it's a sport, and I think it's important that people get out there and exercise. I think we get caught up today between mobile phones and being static. I think it's super important that we're able to get off the phone and go do some exercise. So any form of exercise, in my opinion, is a great thing, and tennis is one of them. Secondly, I think it's a great social sport as well. You get to meet people. You're obviously playing with somebody, whether singles or doubles. And then for me, what tennis has been is it's a great mental side because a bit like golf, you're fighting with yourself, right? But tennis, not only you're fighting with yourself, but you've also got an opponent that's actually hitting that ball back to you, and you're trying to figure out what their weak points are, strengths. So it's kind of like a chess game, but it's a fight within yourself, and I think it's great. It's a great learning a life lesson as well. When you go to work and you're like you're not confident of yourself or you're hesitating or and it gives you a lot of that. And then the last point I think is, tennis for me personally, it got me out of Kenya. It got me to go out and study. I went to the US and then traveled the world. And I just think, it's healthy. It's done a great, it's got me to where I am today. And I owe my life to tennis.
Well, fantastic. You're clearly a wonderful ambassador for the sport. Your love is not diminished. I hope you still keep swinging the racket and also, minding the fort too from the administration side. So thank you very much for your hard work.